Welcome to Guitar Gavel, a place for people who love guitars. These are conversations with musicians, guitar enthusiasts, techs, and collectors about their guitar journey and their love of the instrument. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button, share with your friends, and be sure to sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargavel.com. Welcome to the Guitar Gavel podcast. I'm David Still. This is podcast episode number 8, and I am joined by Bryan Toney. We actually go way back to some extent, a couple of decades though. That's a whole nother story, and some mutual friends, but we're in contact years and years ago. And it's a pleasure to have him on. And Bryan's got a really fascinating story. And as you can see, he's got some really cool guitars behind him. So we're going to hear about his guitar journey, his love of the instrument, the metamorphosis, because again, he's got an interesting story. And then Bryan will share some about his guitar. So Bryan, good evening. Thanks for being a guest. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks for having me. It's fun to be able to talk about guitars and talk about music. I never turned down opportunity.
Well, good. So far, that's all the responses when I've asked guests, that's what they've all given me. So we're on a roll. Thank you for being here. So I like to jump right in because if you're a player, no matter what level you are, you've got a story about how you started playing. Yep. Who was the influence? What was that first guitar? Maybe you were lucky and it was nice. Yep. That's rare, but maybe you were. But just go in and take it away, Bryan.
Yeah, so I started probably when I was, I guess, 12 or 13. But I'd already had piano lessons for 6 years prior to that. And so my first instrument was piano. And I was real fortunate growing up. Most of my elementary school years were in Roanoke, Virginia, and had a wonderful piano teacher, Ms. Turner, Claudine Turner. And she really got me interested in music. And the way she did it was once a month, she would let me pick any song I wanted to learn. And she would go out and buy the sheet music for it and bring it back and teach me that song. So I'd hear something on the radio. I remember I had the sheet music for Let It Be, for example. So she bought the Let It Be sheet music. I learned how to play that. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, the Carpenters, whatever I was hearing on the radio that might pique my interest when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. So that got me into music. And then we moved to North Carolina. I moved to Cary. And I got another piano teacher, and I started losing interest in the piano, mainly because she wasn't wasn't the same style of teacher. This teacher was really focused on classical music, and I guess she saw I had some talent. It was really, almost forcing me to do a lot of stuff that I just really wasn't into. So I think I took lessons for about a year, and then I asked my parents if I could just switch to something else, and they encouraged me to pick up another instrument. So I started taking guitar lessons. Started out with a very inexpensive guitar. I don't remember what brand it was. It's the one guitar I don't have anymore.
Yeah.
So I took guitar lessons there for about a year or so, and then we ended up moving to outside of Nashville. I took guitar lessons there again, and that's where I bought my first guitar. Saved up my lawn mowing money and bought a Yamaha FG160, which I still have. So
yes.
This was a, it was expensive for me at the time. I think I paid about $130 for it, which in, mid 70s for a 14-year-old was a lot of money, but it still has just a beautiful sound and just full body sound. I don't play it a whole lot, but I also never get rid of it. So yeah.
What color label is that FG?
It's just a black label, so it's not one of the real collectors. It's made in Taiwan, but it's got. Let's see if I can find a guitar pick here. I thought I had one. Oh, maybe I don't. I've always got one in my pocket. That's what
you've got one somewhere close. We trust you.
Yeah. Actually, I carry them on my keychain. This is the best little thing. It's a little thing that fits your keychain that you can keep guitar picks. So I'm never run out.
Well, the FG series, I'm trying to think of my history, was introduced in 1968, stateside, right? And then, in Woodstock, Country Joe McDonald made Yamaha famous, Yamaha acoustics. He played an FG 150, which I have one of those. I'm a big Yamaha fan. But part of that whole series was the 150, the 160, the 180, and they're highly sought after, the wonderful guitars. And I'm going to shut up because you were starting to do something.
Oh, no. I was going to show you just how it still has an amazingly full sound. I mean, it's got as strong of a sound as my Martin. It's this one. The intonation's off a little bit because it's a 50-year-old guitar now. And it would need some work to really to be able to play it well. But I keep it around. It's sort of my beater guitar, and everybody needs one of those.
So what were you were a teenager? Approximately how old were you when you got the Yami?
Probably 14. Yeah.
Okay.
14, went down to Friedman's Pawn Shop in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. It's on Broadway in Nashville, which didn't look anything like Broadway does now. Believe me, it was pawn shops and strip clubs, and that was it. And it was not a very good part of town, but they sold new Yamaha guitars down there and bought that, and then so I played that for a couple of years. Found some kids in the neighborhood, started playing music with them. The one of them was a bass player, two brothers. One was a bass player and a drummer, and we formed a little garage band. And so I immediately went out and bought an electric guitar when we started playing together. And that one is here. So this is a Fender Mustang.
Yeah, wow.
I bought used at a music store in Nashville, and the only reason I bought it was because it was inexpensive. I got this and a little Fender Vibrochamp amplifier, tube amp, for maybe $250 total, and didn't realize at the time that this was the original Fender. This is 1964, the first year they made them, and this is the 1964 Fender Mustang. Pre-CBS, back when it was still an independent company, and so it turns out they're collector's items now. And the story of this guitar, so I played it for a couple of years, and then ended up selling it to, I guess when I went to college, I sold it to a friend of mine, and then 3 years later, I bought it back from him. So I lost it, but I got it back now, and I still give him a hard time because he now knows how much it's worth, and he wishes I think he sold it to me for $200, but basically what I paid for it. So he's wishing now he sort of held on to it.
Have you? And I don't know the answer. Have you looked at the value for that in recent history?
Last time I looked, it's there like $1,500, $2,000. Yeah.
Okay, so not crazy.
Not crazy, and they're not a great playing guitar. There's sort of 3/4 size guitar, it's a little bit smaller, but I think it's just the novelty of it as much as anything else. But,
yeah, it's pretty cool, and you've held on to it. I wanted to go back and ask, since your parents encouraged piano at an early age,
right,
and when you said you wanted to quit, they're kind of like, as long as you want to pursue another instrument, were either one of your parents musicians, or did they have a family lineage, or was it just?
No, my dad played a little bit of piano, but no, they didn't really have much of a music lineage. My grandparents didn't play, so it was just I think it was that era where they thought they'd probably read or heard it's a good thing for your kids to play, take music lessons, and so they encouraged it. I didn't play a lot of sports when I was a kid, other than just backyard stuff. But so music was my thing, and I got into it, not just playing but also listening. So then this was about the time I started picked up the guitar. This was early 70s, and this is when FM radio became big, and so there's a lot of music. If you look at the music that came out in 1972, for example, 71, 72, it's amazing how much great music that we still listen to today came out in that era. And so everything from America to Neil Young to Jethro Tull to Yes, I was listening to all of that. And if you turned on the FM radio, you would hear all of that maybe in an hour. And so, Marvin Gaye and Edgar Winter Group and staple singers. And it wasn't just one style of music. It was just a lot of good music. And so I think that also sort of got me going and made me want to play music. Just being, a preteen at the right time in history. when,
Yeah.
when music came out and the quality that you could hear on the radio got a lot better. So.
It is amazing, depending on when you're coming of age. Though, I mean, if you look back at essentially any year or any series of years, if you look, there's certainly lots of great music that was happening. But it really depends on if you're in a sweet spot in musical history, in what that did to you, to your impression on music and how that may have shaped your life. It is fascinating, and that's part of most people's stories. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So playing with the garage band,
Yeah.
then getting towards graduation, going off to college.
Yeah.
What did it look like through those years?
I went to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and so I'm trying to think. So I took my guitar with me. So I played a little bit because I still had my acoustic guitar. I played a little bit there, but then I started went back to piano. I ended up taking some. My major was math. I was math major, econ minor. But I had some electives. I was a liberal arts, so I had lots of electives. I ended up taking some jazz piano classes from a guy named Jerry Coker, who I did not know at the time, but he's known now. He's a renowned jazz instructor. He's written textbooks on jazz.
Wow. Wow.
And so I mean, I remember him telling us in class one time that when he was at University of Miami, he would play with Pat Metheny and Jaco Pastorius when they were just getting started.
Wow.
And so I now realize, okay, this guy, knows what he's talking about. So I took some jazz piano classes and really started playing more piano than guitar for a few years. So I went out and bought I guess after college, I went out and bought a Fender Rhodes electric piano, and then had that for a few years, and then got another electric piano, and so. But all along, I was playing some guitar too. But so I would sort of go back and forth. But I didn't really buy another guitar or get back into playing guitar until I guess sometime after college. So I went from Tennessee down to Atlanta to Georgia Tech to graduate school, and while in grad school, found another garage band, a couple guys in grad school. So we would play at parties, and I would play a little bit of guitar, a little bit of keyboards, and then after grad school, just found some just some people to play with in the basement, and so then gradually sort of got back into guitar then. So
what since you're a math major, and this is way above my pay grade, but there, math and music is highly interwoven.
Yep.
Significantly so, and for someone who, and that's about the level of my understanding. Okay. Though I've taken a ton of math, and I didn't have this connection until I was in math lab. It was like calculus 3. Okay. And one of the math lab tutors, essentially, who was, late 20s or early 30s, was just like a musical wizard. And so he would always, he's helping me out, and he's like giving me these music analogies that weren't really registering with me. But did you ever did you connect that, or was
not at the time? Never really made that connection between the two. I realized that it's if you got a brain for math, you probably got the brain for music. But yeah, I never really made the connection. Until I read about it later.
Okay. Well, I didn't know. Is there a good book that I can use to connect the dots?
I didn't retain much of math. Fortunately, I retained the music. I didn't retain any math. If you asked me to differentiate an equation now, I couldn't do it. Yeah, I can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and maybe do a little bit of algebra. That's about it.
I'm right there with you. Don't worry. Yeah. Needed what we needed to get by, and we're done. Yeah. So a little more piano than guitar for a while, and then I know you had a regular career. I mean, regular career there's a dumb way to say it, but I'm hinting at is where you are today. I don't want to fast forward, but at any rate, regular career.
Yeah, it's all connected. So I shortly after graduate school, maybe a year or so after I got out, after working for a consulting company for a while, I ended up starting my own business, and it was doing Macintosh custom programming. Apple Mac had just come out, and it was this little niche business that ended up being not a bad niche business to get into, and ended up hiring some other folks as the company grew, and again these are sort of math and music oriented people. Computer programmers, turns out, often are also musicians. We had a company band, so there was 3 or 4 people in my company that we got together and played music. And at that same time, I also had turned a basement room in my house into a music room, and had a regular Tuesday night music open session in my basement.
Sweet.
So, and it was neighbors and friends of friends. So we would have almost a full band every Tuesday night. Sort of, there'd always be guitar, bass, and drums, and sometimes keyboards. We start about 7. We always stopped at 11 because we didn't want neighbors get too upset. And it's funny, we did it for 5 years, literally every Tuesday, and never once did a neighbor complain, even though I know it was loud because we had amplified instruments in an in-town neighborhood in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But I think they quickly figured out that we always stopped at exactly 11 o'clock. So we never, they might have been complaining a little bit. If they did, they never say anything to me. So that I started playing a lot more guitar then with that group, and again it was mostly just a very loosely formed conglomeration that we would occasionally get together and play street parties or benefits. I think we might have done a 1 club gig the whole time.
Nice. Yeah.
But I ended up playing both guitar and bass then. So I somewhere along the line I picked up a Fender Stratocaster. It was like a 60s reissue Strat. I don't have it here with me. It's actually my friend Tim's studio right now. So I had a 60s reissue Strat, and also ended up playing bass some. Turns out nobody ever wants to play bass, so I said, okay, I'll play bass. If you play bass, you can always find people to play music with. And if you play guitar, bass is not that difficult to learn. It's just 2 less strings, and if you got a good sense of rhythm. So I bought a Fender bass, and ended up buying. I still have 2 Fender bass guitars, but I don't play them much anymore. And then also during that era, I bought this guitar. Oh, this is still one of my favorites. It's an Alvarez Yari, and it's a pretty rare color. You don't see the white one. There's some black ones out there. I guess these were made in the early '90s, and so it's an acoustic electric, but there's no hole in it. But surprisingly, it resonates pretty well. It's not as loud as an acoustic guitar, but you can play it unplugged. I still have not quite figured out how they do that with no sound hole. But and I'll have to admit, I bought this guitar because I thought it looked cool.
Nothing wrong with that.
I played it in the guitar store, and it had a nice sound to it, and I wanted something that was more of a hybrid, and so I ended up playing this. I still will bring it out for gigs occasionally, but yeah.
Well, again, does it go well for you?
Oh yeah, it plays well. It's got an equalizer on it, so you can get a real nice. Mostly, it's more of acoustic sound at it when you plug it in. Mm-hmm. You don't really get an electric sound, but it has the action of electric guitar, so it's very easy to play.
Okay.
So that's the thing. If somebody who's used to playing electric guitar, if you go to acoustic, it can be harder to play. It's just because the neck's wider, and just it's harder to press the strings. Yes. If you like playing bar chords, playing a bar chord up there on the 7th fret on an acoustic can be a little painful if you're not used to it. Yeah. So this was a good thing for people who used to playing electric to be able to get an acoustic sound. So that was I got that one probably early '90s. It wasn't new at the time, but it hadn't been out too long.
So for the most part, generally speaking, at least thus far in your journey, you've held on to at least your favorites over the time. Yeah.
For most of them, I got a couple in between. I had an acoustic bass guitar that I had for a little while. I've had I had a 12 string not too long ago, the last 4 or 5 years. Thought I'd learn how to play 12 string, but ended up not playing it that much. So I
Yeah.
stopped doing that. It was again it was just more difficult to play than I realized. And if unless I was going to spend time with it. But there was one guitar that I had that I wish I hadn't sold, and that was a black Gibson Les Paul.
Okay.
Uh, and that one, yeah, it just had a beautiful tone, unlike any other guitar, and I ended up selling it, and that's sort of regret that one. The other ones I don't miss, but that was one guitar that I really wish I'd just hold on to.
You can always go get a new Les Paul.
I can always go get another one. That's right.
At least in some regards, it's not without knowing, what Les Paul you had. Yeah. I mean, that one's not irreplaceable.
Yeah,
So,
this would have been probably a late '60s Les Paul. So
okay.
it
Yeah.
was probably if I'd held on to it, would have been much more valuable than.
Yeah. That's a little more difficult. Okay. I thought you just bought one off the rack. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but
It's so, well, what else you got behind you there? Was seeing
so,
acoustic and
so this is my favorite, which is my Martin D28. And if I was ever going to go out and buy a guitar my dream guitar, this would have been it. But this one, I actually it found me. So my wife was from Kentucky, from Louisville, and she had an uncle who was a bluegrass picker up in Kentucky. And I maybe heard him play once, but I knew he played a little combo. And he passed away, and then sort of 2 or 3 years after he passed, she was up there visiting, and she called me on. I wasn't with her. And she called me on the phone and says, "My aunt says that there's this guitar in the closet, and she said you can have it if you want it." And I said, "Well, what is it?" Let me open it up. So she looked at it. She looked inside. She says, "It's a Martin D28." And I said, "Yeah." So again, it found me. And it's been well played. I mean, this guitar has got a lot of mileage on it. There's dents in the neck from using the capo, and almost wore a hole in it right here. I wish you could see it, but it's very thin there from where I guess he used a lot of finger picks.
yeah,
And
it's got a little Willie Nelson to it.
yeah,
Little,
so
yeah.
it was pretty beat up. So I got it and took it to a luthier and had him. It had to have the neck reset, had to get refretted. The braces inside had to be repaired. So pretty much overhauled it, but it was well worth it. And so this is my guitar that I played almost exclusively for the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's my main guitar. And so this is a 1972. So it turns 50 this year. So he bought it new. So it was a one owner, well played guitar with a lot of Kentucky soul in it. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how great it is that it found you and you took care of it.
Right.
Because she could have taken it to a thrift store.
Yeah. I mean, she knew that I play guitar, and just I don't know. She didn't ask any of her other. She didn't have any kids of her own, so she was going to be nieces and nephews, or spouses and nieces and nephews. So she had a guitar and a lot of guns, and so everybody else got guns. I got the guitars.
That's great. That's great, man. And then you have all the history to it, and its stories.
And so so it's never get tired of playing this. And I run an open mic every Sunday night at a brewery here in Greensboro, and take this guitar. And so it ends up being the house guitar. If somebody shows up and they didn't bring a guitar, or just they want to play, and it's always nice to see the smile on their face when they pick this up and play it.
I bet. What a treat! What a treat for those.
One real good musician friend of mine, who's also the producer of my last album, he almost never brings a guitar, and I'm convinced it's because he knows he'll play this.
It's a good move, yeah.
I play Brian Martin, so so it's been my favorite.
So I want to hear you. You're down in Atlanta for X amount of time. You've got your little band going. Your house party every Tuesday night. So you never, it doesn't sound like, well, but maybe so. We haven't gotten there. You've never really spent too much time away from the guitar, or did you later on?
Yeah. And so I went from Atlanta. So I ended up selling the company, worked at Georgia Tech for a couple of years, and then my wife and I decided we wanted to move to Boone. So just was ready to leave Atlanta. My kids at that time were 6 and 8, and we're just thinking, yeah, do I really want to grow up here in Atlanta? I mean, I liked Atlanta. Atlanta's a great place to be single, making money, having a good time. But to me, it's less desirable as a place to raise a family. So we went up to Boone, loved what we saw. I came back to Atlanta and I cold called the dean of the College of Business at Appalachian, who was Ken Peacock at the time. And I just picked up the phone. I said, I introduced myself. And I said, I sold my company, been teaching at Georgia Tech. I want to move to Boone. Can I come talk to you? And so I had a good meeting with him. He sent me down the hall to the management department, and it turned out they needed somebody to do some part-time instruction. It ended up being full-time. And so I sort of fell into a position there. And so we moved to Boone, and I immediately wanted to find some musicians to play with, because I've been playing with these guys in Atlanta for years at that point, at least once a week, every Tuesday night in my basement. And so I went to a local music store in Boone and saw a little flyer on the wall. Somebody's looking for some musicians, and so connected with a couple guys. And we formed a band. It was a guitar, bass, and drums. I think I played mostly bass in that band, because they had 2 guitar players, a drummer, needed a bass player. And so we had fun. We called ourselves Four Wheel Low.
Nice.
And we played at the old Klondike in Boone and a couple times, and so that lasted for about 3 years. And then I ended up playing with another band for short-lived for about a year or so, local band in Boone, and we actually ended up doing a little bit of playing throughout the South. We would go down to Charleston and Savannah and Atlanta and play occasionally. But then after that band sort of ceased to exist, I stopped playing, not intentionally, but part of it was, okay, by this point, my kids were, let's say, 12 and 10. Really getting into soccer and skiing over at Appalachian, and so they were both on travel soccer teams, and so soccer and just it sort of became our life. As my wife and I used to joke that our social life revolved around soccer games. But so it ended up unintentionally just not playing a lot of guitar anymore, and then literally it was close to 10 years.
Wow. Okay.
Of rarely picking up a guitar, and definitely not playing with other people until we ended up moving to Greensboro, and I picked up again there a little bit, and started playing again. But yeah, so there was that long period. I wasn't intentionally giving it up. It's just you get busy with other things. But combination of career. I was also real busy with my job. I ended up starting the Entrepreneurship Center up at Appalachian State, and then moved to Greensboro and ran their entrepreneurship program for a while. So I was just very engaged in on campus, off campus teaching. I did a lot of international travel. I was doing study abroad trips, and having a great time. But just didn't make time for music. So.
Hey, look, kids, you got to raise kids.
Yeah, that's a priority. I mean, in hindsight, I could have done both. I still could have played guitar for 30 minutes every evening if I wanted to.
Well, yeah, you could have played, but your experience playing out and playing with a band. Look, our kids aren't at travel soccer age, and we'll cross that bridge if we ever have to cross it. But that'll suck the life out of you. Yeah, I mean,
it was good. I'm glad they got to do it, and then my youngest ended up being a real ski fanatic. So he was over at Appalachian Ski Mountain, literally, every waking minute that we let him go. So,
that's really cool. So, well, I'll give our audience just a little bit of backstory, because I live in Boone, though, and that's where our paths crossed. one or maybe two times a couple of decades ago when you were here and I was an undergrad. But there's some musical history to Boone for people that don't know. Doc Watson being from Deep Gap, which is a suburb of Boone. I mean, that's almost a joke. Yeah. In contemporary music, it's quite fascinating. So the county population of Watauga, when you were here and I was here, 20 years ago plus, was about 40,000. Now it's about 50,000. And the university 20 years ago was just over 12,000 students with grad students. And now it's 20,000. So it's a small college town, but we have produced, well, I say we, so Doc Watson is the legacy.
Right.
But in modern music, Old Crow Medicine Show used to bust on the streets in downtown Boone, and they were discovered by Doc Watson, if I understand the story correctly. And in real contemporary country music, Eric Church went to App State, same time I was here. And then in even more recent history, Luke Combs. And for country music fans, our contemporary country music fans, I should note, those are two of the biggest names in country music at this moment.
And there's a couple of indie bands that have also come out in the last few years there that one of them I learned about through my son who's going as a skier, lives out in Utah now. But
Rainbow Kitten Surprise.
Rainbow Kitten Surprise is one. I think I discovered them and then told him about it. But he told me about the nude party. Have you ever heard of the nude party?
No, but I'm writing it down.
They got their start in Boone, and they were touring Europe, opening for I don't know, some big band out there. So they've been written up in Rolling Stone, but they were a bunch of guys in Boone, and the reason for their name is they actually, when they were playing in college, that was their shtick. They would do gigs, house parties, and they would play with no clothes on.
Welcome to Boone, everybody.
The guitars helped a lot, So, but it turns out they're actually quite a good band, and they released a couple albums on labels, and they're touring, and I think they live in upstate New York now. So they're for a small town, has produced a lot of a variety of music too, not just. I was fortunate. I got to see Doc Watson play, several times while we were up there, just either locally or down at Merle Fest. So,
it's really cool. And it is really amazing. And look, college towns are known for turning out incredible artists and incredible bands and some of the world's best, but we'll take our claim to fame here. And we've got a few. So, all right. So Greensboro, kids are a little older. Got a chance to get back into it.
We moved here. Kids had flown the nest, so we were sort of empty nesters here, and that's probably one of the reasons I started getting back into it. Play guitar. Started going to an open mic at a little coffee shop around the corner. So we live in town in Greensboro, and 3 blocks away there's a couple of restaurants and coffee shops. I went to an open mic down there and started playing some of my songs, and that sort of got me back into it. So I go down there every. I guess it's every Thursday night for a while, and started playing, and got some good feedback, and met some other musicians, and then decided about 5 years ago that I'd like to record some songs. So I went into a local studio here, and recorded an album. This would have been 2017. Started, I guess, in the winter of 2017, and unbeknownst to me, that year. My job would cease to exist. so it was an unintentional early retirement, I guess we'll call it. But it was just the university had decided that the position I had, which I actually went on to a higher level position in the university, just with a new chancellor, a new provost, they decided that they didn't different direction. And so it was a little bit of a surprise to me. And I remember at the time they said, if we needed somebody to do what you're doing, you'd be perfect for the job. Not really what I wanted to hear at the time, but in hindsight, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I really started getting into music. I had already started going to recording studio, so I finished up that album spring of when it was summer, I guess, of 2017, and then started going out and playing more. So I did a little tour that fall, mainly just to see if I could. Yeah, it was part of my entrepreneurial nature. Is like, could I really just start booking shows across the United States? I've got an album, so I've got something that's on Spotify and Apple Music and all those. And so I ended up. My son was had just moved to Park City, Utah, or actually in Salt Lake at the time. And so I said, I'm going to see if I can carve a path out there, but that'll be my destination. And so I ended up playing in, let's see, on that first trip in Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, Colorado, and Utah. And I had friends from college days sort of along the way that I stayed with. So that's the key to being a touring musician now. If you don't have a free place to stay, you can't afford to do it.
Yeah.
But, so I did that, and had a lot of fun. Just showing up someplace where I only knew one person in the room, which would be the person I was, whose house I was sleeping in, and just see if you can entertain folks. And so that really got me into playing a lot. I mean, just preparing for a 3-hour gig sort of forces you to step up your game a little bit. And I was doing almost all original music, so I would walk into some place in Austin, Texas, or Denver, Colorado. They know nothing about me, and my job was to try to entertain them. I mean, the key to most venues like that is that if they haven't heard of you, will they at least stick around when you start playing? The venue wants people to just stick around maybe an hour longer than they thought they would, and order an extra round of beer or more food or whatever. And so that was a lot of fun. And I ended up doing 3 different trips out west. So I think all total, I probably played in about 13 or 14 states. So South Carolina, Georgia, all the way out to Texas, New Mexico, back through Nebraska and Kansas. And so, and again, part of it was just a challenge, just to see if I could. Can I contact a place in North Platte, Nebraska, for example? Because I knew it was sort of halfway between point A and point B. There was a brewery there that had live music, and I just would say, okay, I'm passing through town, looking for a gig, and I mean, it's like any business in sales. You got to make 10 calls to get one person to return your call, and then maybe that person will bite. So that was a lot of fun. That really sort of got me into what I guess almost qualify as a full-time musician for that period of time. And then of course the pandemic hit, and that all stopped. Yeah. But
did you figure out a method to the madness in terms of, or was it just pure, salesmanship, cold calls, or is there a little formula that you now have to make it?
Yeah, a lot of it was, fortunately with the internet, you can go and explore a venue. I mean, a lot of places were breweries, so I could look at it. Okay, what breweries in town or coffee shops have live music? Then I'd look at the type of music they booked, and I'd say, okay, I think I can fit there. And so I wouldn't contact everyone. I'd contact those places, usually through email. I'll send an email, and here's a link, and explain who I was, and I'd say, I'm going to be there on this date. And I was doing this several months in advance, so the chances are they wouldn't have anything booked. I was able to get a gig pretty much every place that I wanted. So in Texas, I played in San Antonio and Austin and Dallas and Fort Worth. So it was, but it's a lot of work. I mean, I can see why a lot of musicians get frustrated because it's a lot of work. I mean, if you're not willing to do the business side of it, you can't be successful. And most artists, and it's not just musicians, but most people that are creative people, they're not interested in the business side. They don't think they should have to do it, and just don't realize how important it is. Those that do are the ones that end up being more successful, and it's sort of a shame because you have some extremely talented people out there that we'll never hear of because they didn't either they didn't do it or have someone do it for them. And fortunately, my background was business, so that was the yeah, again, that was as much fun to me, the challenge of booking the tour as playing the music. I was fortunate. I was willing to do both parts.
Well, you've got one more guitar back there,
Yeah.
and is that the one? Did you tour with this one, or was the Acoustasonic? Were they out
This this, this one just came out.
this year, right, or the end of last year? I
Yes.
mean,
So this was a pandemic purchase.
yeah, okay, yeah,
So it's a Fender Stratocaster Acoustasonic. So it's shaped a lot like a Strat. Does have a sound hole, but not much of a sound hole. But the coolest thing about it, it's got a lot of electronics built into it, and it can simulate several different acoustic guitar sounds as well as a Stratocaster. And if you're just sitting around the house, I mean, you can play it without plugging it in. A normal electric guitar, you can do that.
that sounds pretty good. Yeah,
You get any type of sound out of it. So, so I have played this, taken it out a few times, but since I haven't played live a lot in the last year and a half or 2 years, but I've taken it out.
so were you when you're traveling? Did you take your Martin?
Yeah, I always take a Martin, and I usually take an extra guitar just in case I break a string in the middle of a set.
Yeah,
But so if I take two guitars, it'll be this and the Martin. If I'm playing with somebody else, sometimes I'll either take these two or just the Martin.
okay.
And now I'm actually going to start taking a keyboard with me too, which I've never done before, but I've been playing it a little bit out. Like I mentioned, I run an open mic in Greensboro, a place called Odin Brewing, every Sunday night. And fortunately we had somebody donate a keyboard for there. And so I went back and started sitting down at the piano, and it's like riding a bike. You can play it. And it turns out all the songs that I play on the guitar, I can play on the piano. Or at least bang out chords. Because I know somebody says play a B minor chord, I know where B minor is on a piano, almost better than I could figure it out on guitar sometimes. So I started playing a little bit, and I'm also participating in a couple songwriter circles, and got some good feedback from them. Started writing a couple songs on piano, so I'm going to start bringing it out. Actually, I'm going to be playing in Boone in a couple of weeks, and I may bring a keyboard up there probably for the first time ever playing a keyboard live. But yeah, part of it's just keeping things fresh. It's like buying a new guitar. Sometimes buying a new guitar, to me, you get inspired to play a new song, to play a different style of music, to write a new song. I know after I got the Martin, my songwriting production just skyrocketed, and I'm convinced it was because I just had this guitar. And just,
I love it. I mean, it's the sales pitch to your significant other.
Right.
Honey, I'm looking for some inspiration.
Yeah, right.
And I've got, I get this much inspiration out of a $800 guitar, but if I get the one that's $4,800, trust me, I'm going to write you so many songs, you're going to get tired of, whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Whatever you need to do to rationalize. But I like the inspiration angle that's never been used before, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. So I guess somewhere along that line too, I ended up recording another album. And so I got two that are out there, and then they're on all the streaming sources. So wherever people stream music, you can find me. Just search my name. Fortunately, I have a unique combination first and last name. There's not too many Bryan Toneys in the world. It's simple, but there's not a lot of us out there. So
and you've got a web page too, correct?
BryanToney.com, BryanToney.com. And so but yeah, you can find the music, and I ended up recording a second album with another brilliant young producer and guitarist here in Greensboro, a guy named Tom Troyer, who's actually producing a lot of North Carolina artists now. He's got his own band called Farewell Friend.
Okay.
I always want to plug Tom because he's a real talented guy.
That's cool. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, and producers, a good producer can sort of take your sort of raw songs and then figure out, okay, what instrumentation would sound good with it. So a lot of times when I play live, it's either just me or me and one other guitar player. Occasionally we might have a bass player or a drummer, but that's sort of rare. But when you do an album, you've got access to other musicians, and you can really spend some time crafting it and really get a full sound. So it's a whole different experience from just sitting in your bedroom playing your guitar. So
as we get kind of towards the end, I'm not going to throw you under the bus because I don't know enough to throw you under the bus. However, we were talking about this offline before. Oftentimes, when you're a young guy, teenager, 20s, nowadays it's different. But you do the ponytail, the long hair thing as you're growing up. Now, and maybe you had one at your UT days or your Georgia Tech. Okay, so you fully embraced the singer songwriter, and you were doing it later in life.
Right. Yeah. So I didn't start growing my hair until I was 57 years old. So, and it actually has been quite a bit longer than this. This is short now for me.
This is trimmed up, huh? Yeah.
This is just cleaned up just for you. No. No rhyme or reason to it, but it's just again, it's probably one of those things that sort of I thought about doing early on when I was in college, but just was more concerned about in that next job or whatever. And just
sure.
When you get to my age, it doesn't matter anymore. You can do what you want. So.
That's right. You can let your hair down now. Do whatever you want. That is the best part. That's
great.
And
I don't know if it helped me get gigs or not, but it probably didn't hurt. When I sent out photos, press photos to try to get a gig, and middle of nowhere, Kansas or Austin or wherever. So.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm sending out, not that well, if I were with this haircut, I'm like, who's this square? Like, what's he gonna, whatever. Yes, have a little personality and persona is certainly helpful. Yeah. On the cold calls. Well, Bryan, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this has been great. Listen, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for showing off your guitars. Thanks for sharing your journey. And I knew it was going to be a good one, but it really was exceptional. This is just a great story and full circle from when you were a kid to now and how you pulled it off. So thanks so much for your time, man.
Thank you.
Maybe, I've got us down. Hopefully I'll see you in a couple weeks, a week and a half at this point up here in Boone. That would be a lot of fun. So I'm going to close this out. I also would like just to thank everybody who's listened. Thank you for carving out this 50 minutes of your day and spending your time with Bryan and hearing his story and hanging out with Guitar Gavel. Really appreciate it. Bryan, I'm going to make a couple clicks here. We'll end it. Thanks everybody. Take care. We'll see you on the next episode. See ya. Thanks for tuning in to the Guitar Gavel podcast, and a special thanks to Steve Kuykendall for composing this music and being such the great guy and friend that you are. As a reminder, hit the subscribe button and sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargavel.com.